Well, thank you everyone for being with us. I think Abby and I were talking before this event, well, before we even filmed the last one, is that we can't believe it's been 5 years that we've been doing this. And this is obviously a special year in that digital marketing. We had one of our clients or friends of ours said that, if you're in a digital marketing agency, this was a wet dream for you to have a pandemic, which obviously none of us wish any of that on us. But the reality is we did sharpen our tools. We leaned in on our clients. We pivoted. I think that was a 2020 word, pivot. And we're happy to share with you guys sort of what we're seeing in the landscape, where things are going, and we brought some of our experts off the front line to talk about that today. So I don't know, Abby, did you want to add anything before we
No,
kick
that's
off?
great. Yeah. I can't believe it's been 5 years. God, I see the gray in your beard.
It's here.
See the
Yeah.
gray in my hair because it's there. You know it, and my eyebrows too now. So yeah, it is. I mean, COVID, I think, has taught us a lot, and I think pivot and nimble are gonna. I mean, those are the words, right? Along with shit for 2020. So yeah, I think we have, Evan here and Stephen from our team. I know you have a couple folks, and we are excited to share some stuff that hopefully works with what you guys kind of want to know and everything. So if it doesn't, jump in. I think the group on this call can answer most of your questions, right, Jared?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, as we talk about, we have a whole list of questions that we've kind of gone over with our team, and things that are important for you guys to be able to think about. But I think, just it's going to have the lens of pandemic in mind, just because that's what we've been all living. And obviously now we talk about Zoom, right? We don't say, let's get on a video call. We say, let's get on a Zoom, and we say things like, instead of I got to stand up and stretch my legs, we say, I have Zoom butt or Zoom ass or whatever, and so it's going to have that filter, that lens on there. But we are excited. I think, we have Summer with us and we have Rick with us, and they're great. I mean, Summer has, she's focused. She's been with the agency for 14 years. Really has done more than every single hat at Noble Studios, and she's now our solution architect. So she's always looking at net new business that's coming in, focusing on web development, all those intricacies. And Rick, with our director of search, is really focused on just search in general, not just from a paid standpoint, but very much with the lens of organic. And so that's we're going to kind of cover some of those things. And I know more content marketing, social, things like that. I know, Abby, you and your team are gonna kick off and cover some of that. So do you want to start with maybe the first question? And
I can, yeah. Let me look here. All right, so I'll just jump in with a good old social media question, and probably Stephen, this might be good for you, but I think Rick probably has some input on this as well. So oftentimes businesses want to use social media as a way to drive sales. Is this appropriate to every business? And if not, how is social media valuable for a company? I know, Stephen, this is something you're always trying to balance with clients that are like, I want to see this many sales from social. How do we quantify it? So maybe tell us a little bit about what that looks like, how you do it, and if it even makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Just a quick introduction. I'm Stephen Smith, Director of Digital Content and Social Media at the Abbey Agency. I've been there for about 4 years. And so it's a great time working with Abby and Evan. So on the question, when it comes to sales, I mean, I hate to give this answer, but I think it just depends on the type of business that you have, because, there's some businesses that have the opportunity to sell content directly on Instagram. I mean, Instagram specifically and Pinterest have shifted more into being more of a shopping platform, not more of a shopping platform, but they have that capability. And if you as a business are able to do that, then yeah, why not? Like there's absolutely an opportunity there for you as a business to push that out there. It's, if you can make the path to purchase quicker and easier for people, then that's a great way to do it. But there's some businesses though that content isn't sold online, and it's sold in stores, or maybe it's a destination, and a purchase is a room, is someone booking a room. And things like that, I don't think are such a linear path to purchase for people. And so I think that one thing that you have to recognize is how quickly and easily can people purchase a product online. And if it isn't as direct of a path to purchase, then social media, I think, needs to be more of an awareness platform. And you can't directly rely on it to increase sales, but you have to more look at it as a way to increase awareness of your brand in general.
Awesome. All right, Jared.
I like it. And I think, feel free, anybody, if you guys ever want to chime in or add content or your perspective on it. I think I want to turn a little bit towards the websites. I think, with everything that's happened this year and everything going, digital, right? You're not seeing as much events, in-person kind of meetings, things like that. How important does the website play a role? And when you think about things like Squarespace and Wix and all this other stuff, is it is that okay? Can that get you by? And, or is the website more important than ever? I guess maybe Rick or Summer, you guys feel free to jump in,
I can start. It seems like kind of a no-brainer answer of, yeah, the website is more important. It seems like these days it kind of limits the amount of touch points that you have to engage with your audience. And of course, the web has always been important, but even more so now, because this is the place that people are looking to find you. And so really focus on the tools that you have available. If you don't have your events, let's say, then you need to go into a digital realm, just like kind of what we're all doing here today. You have to be able to, pivot and adapt. And your website is a tool to help enable you to do those things. So I don't pretty easy answer in my opinion.
Do you think that, I guess, going a little deeper, do you think it's more important this year than it was before? And then like, is there things that we're doing that you guys would recommend to others to be aware of, or privacy things, or just anything like that, I guess?
Yeah, I would say it's more important than ever, but it was always important. So it's even just, I guess, more so now, bonus. In terms of, what kind of features, tools, there's a lot of conversation around privacy. I mean, that's been coming up quite a bit, and it's not going away for good reason. The conversation around privacy, there's so many layers to it. There's stuff like GDPR, there's the ADA, which is American Disabilities Act. It's not just your brick and mortar, it's also your digital landscape that also needs to be looking at ADA. We call that the Web Accessibility, Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. It may not be a requirement necessarily for your industry, but it's going to be going there pretty quickly, particularly with what's known as another acronym, CCPA, the California Privacy Act. And so both with, thinking about all of your audience is now going online, you need to be looking at how they navigate, how they can access your website, and then what data you're collecting about each one of them. So that's going to be a really, really important aspect. And if you don't have a plan on how to collect that kind of information and how you're using the user's information, then it starts with coming up with a plan.
I have one more thing to kind of piggyback off of that a little bit. I think that, one thing that I see a lot of people share, I've seen a meme of sorts that people are sharing all across social media, and people are saying, hey, don't support the big box stores like Amazon and Target during these times. You got to support local businesses. And while I am all about that, and I think that is absolutely valuable, at the end of the day, people want what's easy for them and what's safe for them during these times. It doesn't matter how good of hearts people have. If you don't have an easy option for people to either know how to purchase your product online or know how to, or even promote it online, if you don't have an online presence, whether that be on social media or on a website, or both of those have to exist, I think, for businesses these days. If you want to compete with something as easy as Amazon, then you have to make your path to purchase as easy as something like Amazon.
That's a great point, Stephen. I think when you think about it, when we moved into this pandemic, everyone went to the things they knew, right? The comforts that they had. And it's really hard to get people to step out of those and to try something new in this moment. So might as well mimic, right, the things that they're used to that is easy or frictionless, things like that. Did you have anything, Rick, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would just say this is the same conversation. If you think back 5 years ago, when we did this, it was the same type of question was before. Is like, do we need to spend more money this year and more, resources and more focus on, digital than we did before? Well, the answer is yes. Then it's yes now, and it'll probably 5 years from now be yes again. It's one of those things. But I think that the biggest things that everybody needs to kind of focus on is determining what you want your website to do for you. Because if your website is to be a marketing standpoint for you and like a brand message that's out there for people to reach you, that's one thing. Whereas if you're actually trying to perform and have e-commerce and have all those, it can be something completely different. And by setting kind of the goals in your mind about what you want your website to be and be able to do, I think you set your end result to be the best as well.
Goals.
So don't be everything to everyone. Really focus in, have a clear brand positioning, messaging, frictionless, right, to whether it's path to purchase or, downloading that white paper or getting to a contact form. Just keep it as streamlined as possible, right?
Correct.
So that kind of leads into a question that actually that I have, and maybe you guys can answer this. It isn't on the pre-described questions. But what are some of the ways that you guys think people can help fine tune their messaging? What are, during COVID, like what are some of the exercises or the tools that you guys would suggest that folks here, business owners, are able to really kind of narrow in on what that message is, what their call to action should be, in order to not have people, we all know the path to purchase is kind of a zigzag line now, right? Do they go to YouTube? Do they go to Yelp? Do they go to TripAdvisor? Do they go to Facebook? Do they look, where are they going? So I don't know, Evan, maybe you can kick that off. What are some of the ways that people can actually fine tune that message? We can't hear you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, there's a variety of different ways that you can do this. But I guess, I always think that it's important to kind of zero in on the foundational aspect of this conversation. I think that right now we are in a moment, particularly because we are using so many different digital tools, for example, to engage with people, that our first inclination is to think, can I go digital? How can I use something like Onclusive or other, natural language processing softwares to do sentiment analysis? And those are very bad people want, and you can use all sorts of analytics, but not to be a total light here, but I like to repeat this notion that really our strongest tool as communicators in general is our empathy. We just need to remember to kind of go back to the fundamental nature of the work that we do and realize that really having conversation, participating in conversation, really just getting into discussion with people across a variety of different venues that they exist in is probably one of the most important things you can do. There are always going to be things that you miss using digital tools when you are trying to get an understanding and feeling of what people want, what they need, and how they're doing. But when you consult with your empathy, when you kind of consult with your good sense, and when you have actual conversations with people and read actual conversations and explore widely, you end up tapping into that, I guess, sublime nature of the human experience that you'd miss out on otherwise. And that gives you, I think, one of the most important tools that you have in essentially, being a voice for the customers that you serve when you are putting together marketing programs.
Yeah. I'm sure Rick, Summer, you guys probably have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, Rick, you want to start this one? Nope.
I think Rick is frozen.
Oh,
there he is.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, going in and out. But definitely, I would say that grandmother used to tell me, so it's really a long time ago. But even with things like social media, listening more than speaking to people. We do a great job as marketers of pushing messages out all the time. And a lot of times we fail to listen to what people are telling us and what people are saying. I think that 2021 is one of the next things that's going to be coming. It's all about the consumer itself. And going back to, Stephen was saying, it's, if somebody wants it a certain way, they're going to use it that way. They're not going to say it's better for one versus the other. If it's, a week to get it from one person and a day to get it from the other, they're going to go after that ease and that ease of doing things. So going back to that, I would say on the paid side of as you're doing advertising, this is a great time to be doing testing, to going out and putting out multiple messages, maybe not even just one message, but constantly trying new things. And it's the first couple times you do it, you're going to see big increases. After that, it's going to be smaller amounts that you're going to be able to modify and adjust. But you got to keep doing it and keep moving forward with that, because if you stop testing, that's the best level you're ever going to get to. But if you continue testing, you're going to keep moving it and making it better. I mean, we're on year 3, I think, of one of the largest sites that people use, Amazon. They have not done a complete redesign in over 3 years. But what they do is they run thousands of tests a month, and they do reiterations on their current designs constantly. And so they find that, it's only like 75 to 80% of the things that they hypothesize and determine actually are the way they are. They find that their users are completely different a lot of times than what they're thinking, and that they modify and make their sites. If you think about it, if we did that over time and we just made assumptions and put things live without testing, we would be negating 15 to 20% of our general public from the site that we would be wanting them to use. But by testing, we can include all of those and be making smarter decisions.
For me, I was just going to say 2 points, just your speed of response and action. So the word pivot obviously is going to come up a lot today, but just how quickly you respond. So as things are changing and constantly evolving around, what phase of rollout we're out in right now, just make sure that you're communicating that effectively across all of your digital spaces, whether it be your social channels, your website, etc. And I hope that in addition to that speed, you have the flexibility to be making updates in real time or close to real time to modify your messaging in there. And then the second part of that I was just going to say is making data informed decisions. I don't think we can stress that enough. So Rick was talking a lot, obviously, about testing, and then based on those tests, how they're performing, making adjustments accordingly. It's just using the data to your benefit. What are the things that are resonating with people on your guys' websites, on social, or whatever? Where are those engagements happening? And continuing to model and adapt your messaging based on the results that you're seeing from data.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think I heard 3 major things. It's like, listen, have empathy, and then properly communicate, in those moments of time. I think, I know when the pandemic first hit, we were the first to go to our clients to say, you should turn your paid off, because of the insensitivity, the tone deaf that you might come off with. We're actually right now at that same spot again. Just last week, we started making phone calls to our clients and saying, hey, let's pay attention. Might have to turn off paid, in certain cases and so it's about being empathetic to the user on the other side. It's about listening right to the signals that are out there, and then it's properly communicating your message out there. And that you can't just set it and forget it. I think that's a big thing. But when we talk about pivoting and evolving, it's because we have to. The people's love language changes in this moment in time on the daily, And I'll tell you, we're building behaviors that once pandemic is over with, these behaviors, a lot of them will stick, and these expectations of the new world are going to be here, So, but I guess I have a question, in terms of, things that are maybe here to stay for a while. A lot of us are old enough to be still using one of the #1 digital channels, which is email, and I'd like to just ask a question, like how, in terms of Abby, your team and ours, I guess, how important is email to our clients right now, or to the world right now? And what does that look like in 2021? So I don't know if anybody jump in,
I'll jump on that one. I think that email is not necessarily going to get less, but it's going to get smarter. I think that people are going to be doing different types of campaigns, whether it's reaching people with trickle campaigns when they sign up for something and messaging them over and over, or maybe it is going to be a lot more on the personalization side, where they're only going to show them certain information. Because again, nobody likes getting an email that is like 3 scrolls long that you have to go through and you don't find anything you're interested in, or the thing you're interested in is only at the bottom. You're not going to keep reading those emails. But if you start to get emails that come even more regularly, but have information that's relevant to you, you're going to be looking at that kind of information that's going to be exciting to you. And so I think email, it'll morph a little bit, but I actually think that it'll grow. I think that one of the things that we've been talking with clients about with their email list is really doing some really good hygiene and doing good segmenting over this year that we've been kind of focusing on, because those 2 areas are going to pay off in 2021. It's no different than, as we've talked about, like right now, you may spend more time on content than you are on advertising, and that content is going to pay off in 2021. So just those types of things be looking forward with.
So I have a question, just to kind of pivot off that content. There's a lot of content coming at us during COVID. Oh my Lord, a lot of webinars, a lot of white papers, just a lot in general. Whether it is and social, you know, especially, we're having to really, the content we put on there changes all the time. We can't even really have a plan because depending on what level California is, purple, red, green, orange, yellow, you got to change it all around. So just from a content standpoint, what do you guys think is really impactful? How are you pivoting your content in real time, but even real time times 10, literally? How's that working? Well, Stephen, Evan, Summer, anyone?
Well, I can speak to that a little bit, and you know, everybody else feel free to jump in. But I think that one of the things that, you know, I think that we're all under a great deal of stress, and I've seen kind of across the various clients and across verticals that really the content that is really having the most impact, regardless of what vertical that you're in, is really focusing on what people's needs are, what people are thinking about, what they're worried about, what their core anxieties are at the time. And sometimes that means going beyond the scope, you know, I think that, or beyond the scope of our typical concerns as marketers. You know, a lot of times we're developing content because we want to drive sales or we want to increase awareness about a specific cause. But I think that people are responding very positively to those brands which are kind of positioning themselves as, again, more empathic, more connected to the people. With our destination marketing clients, for example, one thing that I think that we've seen that has worked pretty well is really focusing on a sense of community and or a sense of community and a sense of communal responsibility and understanding, you know, and really communicating messages less in a salesy way, although there is definitely a time and a place for that, and more in a way that indicates that there's another human being on this side on this who's developing this content, and that human being is concerned about you, the team is concerned about you, and we really want to make sure that you're, you know, happy, healthy, safe, and getting you know, resources to support you through this particularly challenging time. People a variety of brand resources and keeps them informed. But I also would argue that it has longer term value because it creates positive affinity for the brand in the mind of consumers. Absolutely. And it's also just a good thing to do.
Absolutely.
I want to call out because I feel like it's a good question and it ties into everything that you guys are just asking. And Abby, with your question, is came from Emery in the chat. It just says, when you're planning a digital campaign, what role does accurate geolocation play in targeting your messaging? I feel like that's like kind of ties in with exactly what we're talking about here. Is each audience or demographic, in your case geo, is potentially in a different phase or in a different place. And so speaking directly to where they're at versus where maybe others in different geos might be, I think it's super important. So how does it play in your messaging? It plays more than ever, I would say, right now, because, you know, depending on where you're located, it makes a huge difference. So if at all, you can definitely inform your decisions and what sort of messaging based off of where they're located. Definitely.
Yeah, imagine you want to say something, Rick, in regards to like some hyper local stuff, you know?
Right. That and just, you know, as we're thinking about how things work within search, there was a term that was coined for Google that happened in 2020, and that Google is becoming an answer engine. It's no longer a search engine. You know, a lot of times, you know, we talk about zero click, and people also ask, and all these other things that get added into Google now. It's all this trend that is going to, as quickly as possible, answer the questions that people are giving to Google. And I think that one of the focuses that people can be doing, you know, we're all really good at creating product pages and things like that, but really thinking about like, what kind of questions might people have about my product or about what I'm producing, and creating pages that are based around that. You're going to get rewarded in the long run because that content is not going to change. People are going to have that question now, and they're going to have that question next year and 2 years from now. So if you can go ahead and be answering those questions and getting that content out there, you'll get and create relationships to people much higher in the funnel when they're maybe not even thinking that they want to use your product, but they may have some just basic general questions. And by answering those types of things at that point, when they get to the time when they're ready to actually buy, they have that relationship with you and they're likely to come to you for that product.
One thing with that real quick, this just kind of ties both we were just talking about with search and Google as well as email content and social in general. I think the goal at the end of the day, whatever type of content you're pushing out there, is to have it provide value for people. And value can mean a lot of different things, but you want, like, just think of yourself in terms of the emails that you get in your own inbox. What do you automatically delete? Because there's some stuff that, like, I don't unsubscribe from, but I mostly never open it for some reason. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird like that.
No,
But then there's other things that, like, there are emails that every single time I will open it. And why is that? Why are there certain emails that every time you're like, oh, I gotta open this one because I want, like, why is that? And the answer most likely is that it provides some level of value for you. And I think that to determine what that kind of value is, I think you can use search and Google. You don't even have to have a fancy program for this. If you wanted to go to Google and type out a basic question that could tie into your business. And then you can build content meaning a new email newsletter, a blog on your website, or a piece of social content. And all of those should tie together as integrated pieces of content, that all of those answer those questions that people are searching for. Because the benefit of that is that if you're able to create content that when people search on Google, if your content comes up, like a blog post of yours comes up within that person's search result, you're providing something that's value for them. It's not an ad that they're getting, and it doesn't feel like they're being sold something. It's something that's valuable for them and they can consume it. And then if you've hooked them there, you can retarget them from your website onto social with content that's similar. You can maybe have gated content. I'm getting way ahead of myself in terms of all this stuff. But at the end of the day, all of this content really just needs to answer the people's questions and continue to provide valuable information for them based on what they're asking as it pertains to your business.
Yeah, Stephen, I so agree. It's interesting when we started taking on B2B as a category a few years ago, and really focusing on it, not just having it kind of show up at our front doorstep and stuff. And what we found was that, to your point, you've got to answer with content. You've got to answer the problem that they have, but you have to do it with a humanistic, empathetic way. So it's not only it has to be value, but they've got to relate to you and want to do business with you. And it was an interesting thing because when you're in the B2C space or the tourism space or things like that, we naturally come in with emotion and but B2B naturally lacks it. And what they're finding is that, if you could be empathetic and then make sure you're solving that problem through value based content, it's a hook, line, sinker. So.
Did you see Patrick's question, Jared? Because that might tie in. So in the digital marketing B2B space, what is everyone seeing success with in the current climate? Facebook, LinkedIn, email campaigns, white papers. What are the things that you guys are seeing maybe working?
Did you want to answer that, Rick?
Events, right? Yeah.
I would say all of those things tend to do really well. One of the areas of focus is taking a look at what kind of content do we have on the site and kind of categorizing those, creating audiences off of those, and then retargeting audiences based off of that. Because what we have tended to see, even with B2B, is people are doing multiple trips to your site before they make conversions of any kind. And what happens a lot of times is the assumption is I got them to my site, but why aren't they converting? But it's just that they may not be at that point where they're ready to convert yet. And so we can't force that. All we can do is continue to create the relationship. And so retargeting to specific audiences, matching your imagery and your messages up with those audiences. And then if they click on ads, having the imagery and messages from the ads be the same things of the page that they're going to land on, creating consistency. So whether it's a social campaign and you're going through LinkedIn and you're running ads through that, or posting something through that, or you're running a display advertising campaign or a video campaign, whatever it is, when they land on the page, you want consistency. So if I see a picture that I am tied to and I like the relationship, and I click on that and I get to it, but the messaging and the imagery is completely different, I'll leave. And the same thing happens with almost all users, because if they, it's almost like they feel like they've gotten a bait and switch. Evan talked about, destinations. We had one client that came to us at one point, and they couldn't figure out why their advertising just wasn't working. And what it was is that their message that they had on the advertising compared to what they landed them on was completely different. And when they simply went through and added the same image that was on the ad into the page that they were landing on, and reiterated the same message that they had on the campaigns on that page, they almost saw a 20 to 30% increase in conversions, because people stayed. They saw that, I clicked on this, I got to what I was looking for, and I'm going to read through this. Whereas if you switch it up the wrong way, it just has a bad effect.
Consistency.
That's a good point. One of our clients in the UK, they're Lloyd's Bank, and they have a private equity arm. And so it's very B2B, and it's all about mergers, acquisitions, and private equity funding and such. And what they found just 100% works, and they devoted all of their attention towards it, is email. Email, because it's hard, and you've got to have good email before, obviously. So, but that whole point, so everything about the website was tooling to get people's emails, doing what we call exit intent. So as you move the mouse outside of into the browser, we do a pop-up that says, hey, sign up, come back later, tell us what you're interested in, things like that. And so email has just been, they have like a 30% click-through rate on their email, which is like industry standards, less than 4%, so I would say definitely invest in email, do list segmentation, list hygiene. Really that's a good channel. And usually to B2B, they tend to skew older. The decision makers and the purchasers, they tend to skew a bit older, so they trust email a lot more than they do in say TikTok.
Oh yeah, I will, just from a PR, if talking about B2B from a PR standpoint, like that is one of the most powerful things that you can do, is build that third-party credibility through. I mean, if you get a story in Barron's or FT or the WSJ, you can then turn that into your email campaign. You can turn that into what people land on your website, into your social campaign. There's still, in my PR, I love PR. That's what I do. That can build credibility faster than anything, especially in a B2B climate, and it can provide fodder for some of the other things that can then help convert as well. I think Chris and Brian, I mean, these are probably Rick's questions too. Can you see those, Rick? Or going one level deeper on Rick's comment, can the panel speak a bit to your thoughts on entry point, new to category product pages, buyer journeys versus change points, switching from a competitor, product pages, and buyers journeys? Given what seems like the increasing complexity of the overall path to sale, what do you feel are the most useful cross-channel attribution tools?
Obviously, two questions, not one.
Yeah, Brian Gifford, whatever. That was a lot of.
Rick, did you feel like tackling that?
That was Chris. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, okay.
Taking a look at that, there are definitely different opportunities. And I think that as you're coming up with your plans about how you want to reach out to different groups of people, I would set diversity up in those areas. Know that your audiences are going to be different, and look at them as being different, and come up with plans specific to them. So if you're really reaching out for somebody that you really have, maybe let's say a really strong competitor that you're going up against, we talk a lot of times about versus pages, where we'll talk about what we have versus the other. Whereas if somebody else is more about the product, just like, I don't know what it is, or I need more information about it, we'll talk a lot more about educational content in those areas, and then talk about what we offer. At the same time, going back to what Abby was talking about on the PR side, being able to get articles out there about new types of content like that are really good. Working with some of the things that we do, like with link building, you get kind of the best of both worlds, because when you do that, you're getting articles out on sites, and a lot of what we work with is looking at sites that have a certain domain authority, so that they're going to actually pass some of that link juice off to us. But then also making sure that the sites that you're getting on for those that you're building out on are relative to the type of person you want to be speaking to. If I had, if I'm talking about high-end sports cars, I may not want to be on a retirement blog, or I might, depending on what they have in their blog. I mean, there's all those opportunities, but going through and kind of being really smart about where you're putting your resources and you're funneling that to is important as well.
Absolutely.
Great.
Jared, do you have a guest, or I feel like there's something going on?
Well, actually, before we go to that, I do want to ask one question. So with everything that's happening we talked earlier, those that weren't part of the networking side, we talked about these sort of these stocks that are doing well, these stay-at-home stocks, the Zooms, the Amazons, the Netflix. I guess I would ask the panel, are you guys seeing anything that's rising right now, like anything that's trending, something new that the group needs to look at? Because oftentimes I've said this before, don't waste a pandemic. The companies that are born in this moment in time, this is all they know, and so if you're not pivoting, if you're not adopting, if you're not seeing these new things, you're likely going to be left behind. So I was just asked the panel, have you guys seen anything that the viewers should know about, or stuff to keep an eye on? I know we talked about AI a little bit, but anything that comes to mind around like what we should pay attention to?
I don't want to jump on everything, but I'll talk to this one because I can think of one thing that I know has done really well this year. And we talk about not being able to get out and go and do certain things. And one of the biggest things, especially as we're dealing with COVID, has been with doctors' offices. We think, oh, well, hospitals have got to just by like raking money in, but it's like there's a ton of things that doctors' offices and hospitals can't do because COVID exists.
Yeah.
And that could be like, we don't want people coming into the offices and things like that. This year has been seeing huge growth in the number of people that are using apps like Doctors Plus and, all of those types of things where you can actually, hey, if I'm just not feeling well, or I feel like I may have something, what should I be doing? And getting somebody on the line and being able to have them, check those types of things out. Even hospitals are setting themselves apart by the services that they are offering during this time. So an example would be Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic is doing remote monitoring for all of their people rather than having them try to come to hospitals. And so they give them tablets with Bluetooth enabled blood pressure cuffs and pulse ox and scales and thermometers and the whole, and they're constantly keeping engaged with those people and calling them when they're dealing with issues to make sure that they're doing okay and that they're not getting into areas or getting sick and tracking it through that. So I think that those are interesting from the health side that are going to continue to grow, and because people are getting used to it.
Yeah. I had people for COVID came to this company called Dispatch, came to my house and gave us all our COVID tests, and they took Prominence, our insurance. So we didn't even have to leave our house, and we got the results back 24 hours later. I mean, and they do everything. They can come to your house and do a lot of things. So it's just interesting. You're right. I would have never used a service like that.
No. Well, and now, do you think that you'll ever go back? I mean, why would we ever go back? I've had to do the teledoc a few times, and it's like, I mean, yes, I do miss seeing my doctor, and if I had a scheduled surgery, things like that, but just for normal things, I mean, these are the changes I see coming. One thing, so thank you, let me seed that a little bit. One thing that has been on the rise, maybe some of you have heard of this, but it's a service called Cameo. And, it's interesting because when you think about, like, we're all consumers of media. I mean, I've watched every single damn thing on Netflix and Prime, and because it's all we got, and we're not, and these actors and stuff, they're not producing, we're not going to shows. I mean, I missed all the concert series this summer, all of those things. And so there's this really cool program out there. It's been out there for a while, but it's called Cameo, and basically Cameo lets you get personalized messages from your favorite celebrities. And so at the beginning of March, I'm just reading off some notes I have. At the beginning of March, there's been 160% increase in talent signups, right? So these are all the actors that aren't able to get to sets. They're not, participating in movies. These are, comedians and whatnot. So they've had 160% increase in talent signups. The platform on a whole has increased 83% in terms of bookings, right? So actually getting bookings. And the talent themselves have commoditized their pricing, and they've gone down by 27%. But this thing is the rage, and you can get Snoop Dogg to wish you a happy birthday and all kinds of stuff. So I want to share my screen because we do have a special guest. So this is Greg Brady. also known as Barry Williams.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barry Williams, Big Brother Greg from the Brady Bunch. I've been hanging with the Bradys for quite some time, but now, older and wiser, I'm joining the Digital Bunch, where everything is groovy. I want to welcome you all to the NCET 5th Annual State of Digital Marketing Panel, presented by your hosts, Noble Studios and Abbey Agency. Have a sunshine day.
But it just goes to show, right? I mean, these are the kinds of, I think, ways of standing out in this new COVID pandemic world. And I will say, I mean, the cost of that was $500. So Abby threw 250 in, we threw 250 in. What we're going to do with that, this is original content. We're going to put it on our site afterwards. We're going to socially share it. We're going to stand out, right, amongst our competitors because we're innovative and we're doing something different, you know? And so I think that's kind of the message. It's like, you know, you can't just be like, oh, good, vaccines are in. We're all going to go back to the world that we knew, and we're going to do the same things that we did before because the behavioral change has already happened, you know. And so you have to eventually evolve, you know, or dissolve, really. And I'll tell you, the ones that start companies during this moment in time, they don't know any different. This is the landscape that they know, and so so I encourage people to embrace new things. I just did download TikTok, so I'm a little bit behind, I'm sure, Abby, you, but I want to learn it, you know. Yeah, I want to know the platform. I want to understand. I want to see, can it actually be good for our consumers, you know, and there's a lot of noise around that app right now in different countries and things like that. So so there is some emerging trends that are coming out, and I definitely recommend you experiment. Almost like when the iPhone came out and we were all downloading apps and we had like little lighter apps on there and flashlights and levels and shit. You know, it was just because it was a new platform and it didn't fully stick yet into the market, but we all downloaded a million apps. Now we're very intentional on what apps that we do download. I would ask you to get creative again. Get curious again, because there's lots of innovations that are happening right now, and those that can show up with those, or that have experimented with, or can add context to conversations and stuff, are going to be the ones that are trusted in the future. And that goes the same if whether you're a marketer or you're just communicating with your normal customer. So anyway,
apps or some of the different marketing platforms that this group might have tried. I know, you know, I feel like I've spent a lot more money on software than I did last year. And that's fine. But what are some of the things that you guys might be upgrading to or checking out that are going to make our lives easier? Maybe some that might be good for this group, platforms that they can use to help be smarter marketers for their business.
So besides, everyone is using Zoom now, right?
Yeah, Zoom doesn't count. Zoom doesn't count. Someone asked about text messaging in the chat, like text messaging versus email. I mean, we all get bombarded every day with, I'm sure you do too, Jared, hire us to do your text messaging. I don't know if I love text messaging. I'll be honest. I think it's very intrusive. For political season, like, it makes sense. But other than that, I am on the fence. I'll be honest. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on any of those different ads?
Yeah, I disagree. I when it comes to text messaging, there's select few companies that I allow to text message me, and like Plato's Closet, for some reason, is one of the few. I rarely shop there, but for some reason, I still, like, my wife and I get the text messages from them, and it's something I'm like, oh, there's a little coupon. I'm gonna go use it, and for me, it's like, it is getting if that text message went to my email, I guarantee I'd never use it, because by the time I actually got to it, and just because my work email, I answer relatively quickly, but because I'm on my work email all the time, my personal email takes the back seat a lot of the time, because at the end of the day, the last thing that I really want to do is read more emails, because I've been doing it all day. And so text messages for me is, I'm like, oh, it's a quick little text.
I'm 44, so yeah.
Yeah, it's a quick little thing that comes in, and it's so much easier to opt out of. I can just text them stop. I don't have to go through some whole unsubscribe list to be able to get off of it. And so to me, it's like, text message it's a little bit obtrusive, sure, because it coming to my phone, but I don't know. I feel like it's so much easier to opt in and opt out of it. And yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that.
So I actually have a COVID text messaging story. So we're sensitive to be eating out a lot and getting out. My wife has an autoimmune deficiency, and so considered compromised. And so, but we do take home Papa Murphy's pizza because we're like, well, if it has the virus on there, we're going to cook that son of a bitch off, when it put it in the oven. And so long story short, we had this routine of going to our cabin in Markleeville every Friday. We go there and we would pick up Papa Murphy's on the way there. And I did it for probably 6 weeks. We did this in a row. And the first time they kept asking, put your phone number in for our rewards, Now I never did it. And then the third time I did, I was like, all right, screw it. We're going here enough. After 2 more times, I got right at about 3 o'clock. It's about 4 o'clock. We stopped by Papa Murphy's. At 3 o'clock, I got a text message from Papa Murphy's. So it's so contextual, right? They knew the time, they knew my frequency, they had my cell phone, and they sent me a coupon, which I used, And so it's like, wow, that's powerful, contextual, in the moment, geolocation, whatever you want to call it, marketing, So I think text works. It's just can't be intrusive. I don't like the political stuff.
Yeah.
But my dentist, I get it through my dentist. They send me a text message and it's like, are you going to, and hit the C to confirm or, whatnot. So I think it's got its place, but can't be creepy because that gets right into my pocket, whereas that's personal right now, so and it's a push. So it's not like me going out to Instagram or anywhere and taking that information. It's kind of intrusive. So it's got to be the right, again, that Papa Murphy's one was a perfect example, So.
Talking texting, but also some of the systems and things that we've been building upon during this time. I was going to touch on security, and I would say that I appreciate the 2-part authenticators or 2-factor auths that use my phone number as the 2-factor that provides you a code, and then you can successfully log in. So I definitely don't see that going away. I definitely would say that that's going to be becoming more and more the standard when it comes to logins and securities. I know I put something in the chat early on around secure passwords, super important, and a 2-factor, even doubly so. So the 2 things that I was going to say that we've been focusing a lot on at Noble specifically this year is security. Hands down, most important. Because everything is so remote now, and there's all those, hackers and people that are trying intentionally to do harm. The second aspect is our communication methods. So I know there's a lot. We try to avoid sending each other individual text messages or calling each other. And, we use the hell out of Slack. So sure, we've got our Zooms and everything like that, but we use Slack, and that has been a great method, not only for us to communicate amongst ourselves with the internal teams, but with our clients as well.
Slack has been great, I think, for all of us. I don't know what we do without it. Even I got on Slack, which is shocking because I tend to not do anything but email if it's up to me. But
Slack is actually the worst thing about Slack is it has the worst user adoption, at the very beginning, installing it, getting it to work. Once it's there, it's beautiful. It's just, I call it water cooler conversation. And we actually set rules in place for Slack, for our teams and with our clients, in that you're not going to send documents via Slack. You're not going to send passwords via Slack. It's for communication. And then if it requires more than a lot of communication, let's jump on a meeting, and so we set these ways of using these communication tools. But I would say, maybe that's not going to help you be better at marketing, but it's definitely going to help streamline communication and efficiency with yourself and your clients, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say another thing from an efficiency standpoint, I went remote before all of this happened. So I was a little bit ahead of the game of using some of the different tools and that, but a lot of times,
Lost you.
Bum, bum, bum.
We can't say you're muted. That's another big term we've been using this year. You're muted.
Yeah.
We got him. He's back.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Rick.
okay.
You cut out. So.
Sorry about that, but one of the tools that I started using because I was leading alums and trying to take notes was an app called Off, and it listens to the audio going on, and it learns the voices of people, and it learns the spellings of things, and what it does is it transcribes everything that just went through your meeting and puts it into a giant document with all of the people that spoke through the meeting and assigns them names. And you can go in, and once they've heard the voice once, you can say, like, if Summer's on a call with me, it'll actually now always tell me, like, as it's transcribing Summer, and it'll have what she says that's on
What
there.
was the name of that? You were cutting out when you said that.
It's called Otter.
Otter. Oh yeah.
Noted. Next time I'm talking to Rick, I'll drop a lot of F-bombs.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of our noble ones that are internal have a lot of those things showing up in them. But for me, it's great too, because I can go back later and like search for things that I know was in one of the meetings from last week, and put my dates in, and then look for a keyword that I'm looking for, and it finds the auto recording, and I can sync up and even re-listen to the time when we were talking about it, just to make sure that I have exactly what we all agreed on.
What is there any? Those are great tools. If internally, is there any like tools externally that we could offer, or some off-the-shelf ones, easy to adopt, that can help people run marketing better or more efficiently, or anything pops to mind? Yeah, Stephen, please.
I think the best one, and I'm speaking as someone who actually uses this, is Canva. Canva has been such a great tool, and this is something that I find to be valuable. It's not going to replace a creative team, but Canva is a great tool for people to be able to. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's there's a free version of it that is wonderful, and then the paid version of it is even more wonderful. It's a program that it's web-based. There's an app version of it as well that allows you to quickly create content for social media, a banner for your website. It's a graphics generator is what it is. There's a lot of wonderful templates within there. If you get the paid version, there's stock photos that come with it. There's stock video that comes with it, and it's a great way. You can even build templates within it. And so that way, if you want to have a branded template, and you can upload fonts to it. And so it's a way for you to just quickly create high quality visuals for your brand. It's never going to replace a creative team, because if you have a very specific vision that you want, then go to a creative team for that. But if you have just a quick newsletter that you want to push out, or if you have a quick Twitter post that you want to push out, and you don't have Photoshop, or maybe you don't have some photo editor or a visual editor, Canva's a great tool for that. I 10 out of 10 recommend it.
Especially during COVID, when we've had to do things all the time, and there isn't budget to design everything at all. You got to be quick. So
I was just thinking of that, Abby, because right when we went in and we recommended all our clients to stop their paid, what we then said was go to social, organic, be sensitive. We wrote, here's what tone you should come through. Here's the things not to talk about. Here's the things to talk about. But to have a tool, Stephen, like Canva, that you can actually go to, so that it does, because I think oftentimes we hear, well, we don't have the time for that, or I don't have the budget for that, but social media is just such a great place. I mean, all of us have been using social media way more than probably we want to. And so having a tool like that can give us relevant content in the moment, it doesn't break the bank. I think that's a great tool.
Yeah. I think Wes's question, Jared, might be a good one to ask after that. I mean, this is, so people are leaving Facebook because of censorship. Twitter now, every time Trump tweets, it says, this is not true. Parler, all of my friends from Fallon have left to go to Parler. So is this temporary, or is this long-term? And what does this mean for the power of, I mean, some of us have built, really large social followings on these platforms. What happens now? So I'm sure you guys all have thoughts on that.
I do, as I know I was just rambling about Canva for a little bit, but I do have some thoughts on that. And I think that a good example to look back on is when Facebook first came out. Let's remember, what was the big social platform then? It was MySpace. I remember when Facebook first came on, and I didn't have a college email address at the time because I wasn't in college, and you had to have a college email address to get in. So I was like, well, I guess, why would I want that? It's the same thing as MySpace. Why would I want Facebook? And at the end of the day, it's just become they're the same thing. But at the end of the day, eventually, no one's on MySpace anymore. Eventually everyone moved over from MySpace to Facebook. Will that happen now with Parler, or will people leave will there be such a mass exodus that there was, 12 years ago or however long ago it was? No idea. And I think that it's something that time will tell. But my gut is that Facebook is, as a platform, is way more ingrained in our society than MySpace ever was. MySpace was something that middle school kids had, and parents weren't on it, but so many more people are on Facebook. So my gut tells me that if people are going to move, I don't think that there'll be a mass exodus of people moving from Facebook over to another platform. Sure, some people will move over, but at the end of the day, I think the thing that people need to keep an eye on is, what are the platforms that kids are on instead of Facebook? Because I know kids that aren't on Facebook because it's their parents' platform that they're on, and so they're on TikTok and they're on Instagram and they're on Twitter. And so that's, I think, the important thing to look at is, and sure, we can have the conversation of things like The Social Dilemma, with that documentary that came out, that has caused a lot of ripples, and we can talk about that too, because I have my opinions on that. But when it comes to, is there going to be a mass exodus? I don't think so, but I think that in 10 years, there'll be less people using it because they've adopted a different platform when they were younger. So
to me, I think it boils down to two aspects. It's trust and transparency. And in all of these social channels, there's not enough of that. And the response of Parler's creation is as a result of those two things, is the people that are on all these various channels, there's a lack of trust and there's a lack of transparency on exactly what they're showing us. Is it the stuff that we want, or is it the stuff that they think we want? And not having any sort of legalities around the specifics. Right now, it's kind of up to the states to define that, which is why, we see the California Consumer Privacy Act in place. Well, that is going to have a ripple effect. So until we start kind of policing the transparency of not only what people are doing with their data, but how are they displaying that information and showing it as truth or not truth, I think that is going to be the defining moment for a lot of these social channels. And sure, I mean, Facebook's, it's been hit, the gamut of that. But it's going to be one of many. It's going to happen, unfortunately, I think, with all of the states to make those rules and laws.
Yeah, I agree with you too, Stephen, in terms of the call it maybe a slow transition. I think about what happened with Instagram. It was the cool kids, sort of phone app, filter, and then it turned into this social platform. And you've got Facebook, acquiring that. A lot of those users have migrated either from Facebook to Instagram, or they now have both accounts, So I think also people, again, back to that excitement, right? Having like a lighter app on your phone and things like that. There was an excitement to build your own profile and get yourself out there. I think people's exhausted with that idea of like, wait, I've got to go and find all my friends again. I don't think that's exciting for people, but I think the transparency part, and the privacy part is what's, I think, going to emerge, and that could draw people to it. But I don't know if it'll be a mass exodus and then jump over. I think it'll be, if anything, possibly through more mergers and acquisitions, and then migrate like a slower migration.
Yeah. One thing I will say about the different, I think Facebook acquiring Instagram is probably one of the best business acquisitions ever, because one, Instagram, at the time when they acquired it, I was like, why? Like, Instagram such a small platform, and now it's huge. It's the term influencer never existed really before Instagram, and now this whole type of content, and it's become huge since then. I think that one thing that we have learned about the emergence of TikTok and Instagram, and I know they're vastly different platforms, even though Instagram really just wants to be every other platform these days. But I think that the benefit that we've seen of a platform like Instagram compared to Facebook is simplicity. And I think that if you go to a Facebook's business page, if you wanted to see a week's worth of content, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to scroll down through that. But with Instagram, it is so simple. And I think that, just going back to the beginning of this conversation, is if people can find content and information faster and in a more simpler way, then that's going to be more valuable for them. So I think that's something that just to pay attention to as well.
You know, that's a really good point. Something that I was thinking of, and Stephen, I really appreciate you touching on this notion of simplicity, because something that I also have seen emerging, not just people going to other platforms or things like that, although that's something that is happening, is that I find increasingly that people are developing Substack newsletters and like very, very basic kind of content, things that like reach out to their audiences directly and are trying to develop platforms like that. There's a new platform called, well, I don't know how new it is, but it's called Clubhouse, that is like a little bit more focused on intimacy and privacy and kind of having conversations like that. And so thinking about this and kind of thinking a little bit about Wes's question about how, you know, we anticipate and, you know, how we're anticipating these things and thinking about how this will evolve over the next 6 months, something that I always think about when I work with people, or even when I develop my own content, is, well, I need to be mindful of the fact that these shared platforms, these social platforms, there are so many different things that are happening on them at any given time that could dramatically impact my performance. And for that reason, it's very important for brands or individuals to be thinking about ways that they can own their audiences and have a direct line of communication with them. And so with that said, you know, kind of taking this conversation, I guess, kind of full circle. I can't remember exactly where the question was asked, but in that sense, to me, that signals that email is going to continue to be email is going to grow in relevance, but of course it's going to change a little bit.
Good point. I think we're close to at time. I wanted to ask maybe the panel really quick is there any advice? I mean, you know, let's assume we're in this 6 months, 9 months, you know, maybe till a vaccine comes out. Is there any advice to the group, you know, of what things they should just hone in on? I mean, I love simplicity. I've heard empathies. I've heard these great things. What can we all take away from today when thinking, you know, that we're going to be doing this for another 6-9 months, and then of course the new future, you know? Anything come to mind?
Invest in your technology stack, I guess. If there's ever a time to focus on upgrading and improving your systems, now is definitely that time. You know, rip the Band-Aid off, just make it happen. It's not going away. So
don't just remodel your house at home, but kind of remodel your tech stack.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that because, you know, that's what we do as our bread and butter. Like, just genuinely focus on that, and then focus on security and focus on inclusive designs. So, you know, all audiences that visit your digital landscapes can have the same experience.
I think something we've learned, you know, I think both Noble and Abby have big offices, right? That we pay a lot of money for. And I was always a little hesitant about having too many people work remotely. I mean, Evan, Lauren, you know, Evan's in New York, typically Lauren's in Nebraska. And I always gave me, I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Now I'm going to look for the best talent no matter where they are. Yep. And what that does mean, I think it's great because, you know, Noble and Abby have a policy where we do not take each other's employees. Yeah. But I don't think other agencies have that with each other. And it's a real big pain in the ass. So now I don't have to worry about that because I can go hire the best people anywhere. And that's really attractive that we've learned how to do this remotely. So that's something I plan to focus on in the future, is really, you know, growing a remote team as well as our brick and mortar team, because that means you can have the best of the best. And you don't have to deal with some of the shenanigans that might go on otherwise. So I love that.
No, it's great advice. I think for anybody that applies to any single business, unless you're, you know, have a brick and mortar store, they have to be there. But, you know, a massage, whatever it is, a hair salon, that's going to be hard to have hairstylists around the US. But I think in general, it applies to 90% rule that embrace this moment. That's a good point. Anything else from anybody?
I would say one more thing would be, I think this year everybody's learned about that we've had to create and modify and enhance our relationships, whether it's with clients or if it's people that we're going to be doing business with. It's all about the relationship. And, you know, Evan talked about this earlier. It's about listening, you know, figuring out what they've got to do, being smart with it, and realizing that we really all are in the same boat.
Yeah.
We're all dealing with issues, and everybody has different ones, but we also need to be thinking about what are the issues that clients have, or the issues that somebody that's out there needs, and finding solutions for them and coming up with the best recommendations we can. We talk about those companies that have had really great growth this year. That's all they've been doing. They've been focusing on what's the problem, how can I make a solution, how do I make it best for all those people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, build deep, meaningful connections. This is a moment we're all doing it. When we see kids in the background of our house, I mean, we've all been vulnerable, right? We've all exposing more of our personal lives, and I think it's been a good thing. I mean, I would say we're closer to our clients, and we were always close. We were closer to them now than we have been before. So
I agree with what you just put in the chat. You know what? Now's not the time to say this isn't in my scope of work, or this is not what I was hired to do, or I don't. You know what? Now is the time to say, absolutely, I am your team member. I am here to help. What can I do? More than anything, it is not the time to be put. We want to not get taken advantage of, but we need to be good partners now. Whatever business you're in, be a good partner, because next year and the year after could be tough. It could be tough. We don't know, but
we don't know if we've seen this fallout yet of all this change or whatnot. And so I think you're right. It's like, for a while we train ourselves, and it's the hardest thing to do, is train ourselves to say no. And now we have to train ourselves to say yes, and then we can go back to saying no in the future. But yeah, it's like, I've got a client who wants to give us 5,000, or I got a client that wants to give us no money. Which one am I? Now, if there's an opportunity cost, well, one's going to give me 15 over 5. Maybe I'll go to the 15 because I want to keep things going. But yeah, just think of that. Yeah, now's the time to say yes, and you can retrain yourself to say no later.
Absolutely.
So.
Make Abby people hear that. See, it's not just me.
Oh,
I
fuck.
tell them that too. I'm like, Jared says the same thing, guys. He says the same thing. So
Absolutely.
yes, now yes is the word.
Yeah, you don't want toxic clients, right?
No.
Someone that comes in that you're taking advantage. But if they don't have the budget, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I think just
one day.
Just one more thing on that real quick. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to our clients and the people that we're working with, they're not coming to us because we're just working together. They're coming to us looking for solutions. And they're coming to us because they have an actual struggle and challenge and problem, especially during COVID right now. And the more value we can be for people, it's just better in the long run. Like, I totally agree. It's like a challenge of learning to say yes to people. But right now, I know this is super cliche, and we've all heard it a billion times, but the more we can work together and be a valuable resource for people, there's just a ripple effect that comes from that.
Agreed. Yeah. I guess, Dave, so with that, do you want to take it back over?
Excellent. Well, folks, thank you so much. This is our 5th annual one, and I swear this was our best one yet. So thank you to the Noble and Abby teams, and thank you, Abby and Jared, for putting this all together.
Yeah, honestly, guys, if anybody needs to talk during these moments of time, there's no filter. Feel free reaching out. I know Abby and we care about our community. We care about, everyone. So just whatever we could do to help, so. All right.
Thanks.
Hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Bye, Dave. You look great. You're winning.
Keep it up, Dave.
I'm looking now. Bye, guys.